All right.
Thank you, Deb.
Sure. Let's get started. Eric, I guess you're the first victim with backend.
Yep. Here I am. Good morning, afternoon to everyone. So on backend last week, we released Synapse 1.95. Actually, quite a small release for once. So not much to talk about really. Some highlights include improvements to the performance of the purge history admin API, and Patrick has been working a bit to remove unnecessary memory allocations at the database level. This should just make things run both faster and reduce the amount of spikiness of the Synapse memory consumption. And yeah, otherwise I've been trying to make it so that multiple workers can handle the receipts endpoint. As yeah, it'd be useful for matrix.org. Otherwise, in the coming week, basically more of the same, bug fixes, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's backend.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Do we have somebody for Dendrite and account portability?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So last week we fixed a state reset bug in Dendrite that was primarily around memberships. It turns out we just didn't implement a part of the spec at all. So we've now added that, so that hopefully should fix some of the state reset issues we've been seeing in Dendrite. And then we'll also look into some database connection leaks where Postgres just racks up lots of connections and then fails to make new ones. And then we're also making progress with the crypto ID prototype. And the goal for this week is to hopefully get the initial MVP of that kind of working in a pseudo working state, such that we can then follow up with MSC type documentation next week as to all the stuff and changes that would have to go into formally adding that to the spec.
Did you announce previously what was in the scope of the MVP? Like, for example, is the MVP going to be federated right away?
Yeah, so the MVP, we haven't really talked about the scope of the MVP, but at least I'm the only one who's been really calling it the MVP. But the scope, yes, both local and federated stuff will be working, but it's kind of limited to being able to create a new room, join a room, invite to a room, just kind of like the basics for room stuff. And then the bulk of it is mostly around key crypto management and clients signing events and all that handshake jazz.
All right, trivial stuff.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Devon. Do you have somebody in Specland?
Hello from Specland. Yeah, we have a few new MSCs this week, which you can peruse at your leisure. But in terms of the updates, the custom emoji and sticker MSCs are actually getting review now, which is exciting. This is mostly being done by Travis under the conflict resolution area of the spec process. We expect this to take a few weeks, so watch this space. But do raise thoughts on it in the meantime. Otherwise, yes, as we are building up the Matrix Foundation, we are trying to figure out how exactly the governing board works into this. This is the group of individuals or companies who sponsor the foundation. They make up the governing board. They will not have the say on which MSCs get accepted or rejected. That's still with the spec core team and ultimately the guardians, but they can provide guidance on which MSC should be looked at next. So again, watch the space to see how that all shakes out, but it is something we're looking into at the moment. And yeah, otherwise, if you have any questions for the spec core team, you can come find us in our office or in the Matrix spec core team room. Matrix spec room, rather. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dave, I believe you're speaking for the VoIP team.
I am, yes. No Florian today, so you get me. No releases last week because we've been working away in the background doing all sorts of things, mostly working on support for the Rust SDK and adding events there so that we can embed Element in the mobile apps. And that's coming along, almost working now. We've also got a big PR out for Element Web, which replaces the handling of Element Call events there to update them to other new style events. So that will make Element Call events in Element Web work. So hopefully finally a step closer to getting that out of labs. Per participant E2E is another thing for embedded element call in Element Web, and is now working, having fixed a bug in LiveKit SDK. So that brings that a step closer. There's lots of updates coming to the UI to get it's all using Compound's goodness, and then debugging some weird errors that people are hitting when they get disconnected. And that is your summary.
All right, comprehensive one. Thank you. Johnny, are you around to talk about Rich Text Editor?
Hello, I am. Yes, so not too much this last week, but we've done a bit more on mention support for iOS, allowing the editor to ignore keyboard input, and for Android, a bit of a stability improvement because we've handled some more crashes and tracked those. And this week, not too much, but we are going to follow quite soon with some more mentions work and stability improvements.
And this is some work that has landed in Element X iOS, I believe, the mentions typically.
Yes, I think there is some mentions already in Element X, but the iOS team can probably tell you more.
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a few sections. But before that, do we have an Andy to talk about Element Web?
Hello, yes we do. No progress this week on stock notifications, just because of who was in. He wasn't in the office, but more will continue on that this week. Meanwhile, we've done the first update to change the right panel in Element Web. So you might have noticed visual changes there, just giving us consistency with the top panel and consistent functionality as well. We've been working on OIDC support in Element Web, and we've spent some time working on MAS to help with that, which is this server that kind of underlies it. Now we're back onto OIDC. We've reduced the scope of what we're going to do for the first go, which means that we're in a kind of final testing phase for proper OIDC support in Element Web with some limitations around guest logins and cross-signing. We're also in the background working on our release process, which currently is fairly time-consuming and error-prone, making it more automated to free up more time for coding, which is excellent.
Right. The right panel you mentioned, it used to be in develop and then it was rolled back at some point. Or am I mistaken?
I don't know the specifics on that. I don't know what anyone else does.
I don't think it's been rolled back. It should still be in develop.
Oh, maybe I'm mistaken with the headers, the new headers at some point, which were in labs.
Yep.
And I think
So it's two different things. It was put out of labs by default, but it was then relabs by default because of some missing work in the right panel to access all the functionalities that you could access from the older header. So that should be coming soon.
All right. Thank you both. Do we have a Benoit to talk about Element X on Element Android? Just Element X Android today.
Yes, you do. I'm here. Hello. So on the Android world, we have released the Element X 024 last week. It made it live. And the crash rate has noticeably decreased. So that's good news. Besides that, we have made huge progresses on lots of features, and we are, for most of them, doing some polishment at the moment. So I'm talking about key backup, pin and biometric unlock, voice message, and element call. Also, we have made progress on the code coverage. We are now very close to 64% of code coverage, so that's also good news. And finally, we will build a release candidate tomorrow. So it will probably include all of these new features. Stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, Benoit.
Thanks.
Do we have a Doug around to talk about the iOS counterpart?
Hello. My weekly repetition of what Benoit just said. We have spent time working on voice messages. They had a lot of polish last week, and they were enabled on Friday. Mentioned pills and suggestions. They were updated to use the final designs, and loads of little edge cases worked out, and they were also enabled on Friday. Then the PIN and biometric unlock is now complete, and hopefully will be enabled by the end of today. The element call feature flag is just waiting to be enabled, which again, end of today, hopefully. Then we switched the app on Friday to use the SDK built from a branch with key backup support. The UI for that is currently behind a feature flag, but in theory, if you sign in with a fresh session and cross sign, I think that's enough for you to start using a backup. We fixed a bug where sometimes you could put the app in the background and it would potentially send read receipts. So that's been fixed, and hopefully that will help with some missing notifications. Tomorrow we need to make a build of the RC for an October release, and then the remainder of the week is likely going to be focused on bug fixes.
So the RC is going to be distributed on test flight.
Yep.
So the public test flight, so everybody will be able to test the fancy mansions that we have mentioned before.
Correct, yeah.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Do we have a cat to talk about QA?
You do. And we have two big things to celebrate today. We have reached over 80% test coverage on Matrix Rust SDK, and we have increased test coverage by almost 5% on ElementX Android. Both very good bits of news. In other news, we've improved how we do tracking on defects and regressions with ElementX, and we've done a lot more testing as well. Actually closed a few epics, including polls and location sharing, with the final fixes now that those have landed. And this week we have a lot more testing planned for ElementX.
All right. Thank you very much, and congratulations. Do we have Adamir to talk about the Rust SDK?
Hello, yes. So, as Kat mentioned, we improved our test coverage. We are continuing to improve the widget API. I almost managed to merge the secret storage support into the main crate, but GitHub lost a bunch of suggestions from Dennis, and now I'm waiting for him to input them again. And backup support is mostly done. It's even well tested. And I think after I write some docs, I can produce a PR. There's still a bunch of semi-related stuff ElementX can come back to main, which is this recovery support, which is like a holistic view of a secret storage and backups. And that will happen hopefully soon as well.
All right, thank you very much. Rich, Little Birds have told me that you would be using some of the work that is happening in the Rust SDK.
Certainly are, yes. So exciting news in encryption last week was enabling Element R on develop.element.io. I've said it elsewhere, but say it again. If you try this out, we'd be grateful for any feedback. Let us know how you get on. Also in the encryption team, Hubert is continuing his work on MLS supports, and coming up, more of that, more polish on Element R, making it faster, fixes some bugs, that sort of thing. Life goes on.
All right, thank you very much. Halfshot, what's been happening in Bridgesland? If we have a Halfshot. We don't, do we? I don't think we do. But I can cheat, because actually I am involved in one of the 2 bullet points, and that's the second one. As you may know, the Libra chat is likely not going to go back online anytime soon, and we are working with somebody to help us cleaning up the remaining users, because a few users are still online. A few Libra chat ghosts still appear on the Matrix side, even though you can't actually send messages to the IRC side. So we are going to clean that up and we're trying to contract with somebody we know to help us with that. Quentin, are you around to talk about identity and authentication?
Yeah, so what happened on the Matrix of Service side this week is loads of UI polish. So I've attached some screenshots of some of the changes. So we had a design review round with the design team and implemented most of that last week. And one of the features that got included in that is that now you can add some branding in your of-service instance. So a service name, privacy policy links, terms of services, stuff like that. So that's it for this week, for last week. And this week, we're going to focus a bit on making the migration tool, make it easier to run by notably by publishing it on NPM. There's a bunch of bug squashing happening as well. And I will probably got a release this week with all the new UI polish that happened last week. That's it.
All right. And I promised you I would help with the translation in French, and especially I would chase the Greffon and the other awful translations that might have slipped in, but I didn't do it because I'm a terrible person. I'm sorry. I'm going to make up for it this week. Then we have Tim. What do you have for us, Tim? Yes, I'm glad you asked. So last week I was off most of the week and it was fantastic. Thank you for asking. I have two small PRs on the matrix.org website. One is quite critical actually because it's about asking for consent before loading the YouTube player. If we don't do that, we are breaching GDPR, which is not ideal. Coming up this week, I need to figure out how to add distros on matrix.org. So distros is basically the Matrix Ansible deploy Ansible playbook, which has been quite popular in the community. It can be the ESS, and don't ask me what ESS stands for, is Element Server Suite, I believe, but I don't know what the other ones are. So I'm going to check that before adding them to matrix.org. I need to give matrix.org some more attention and then focus a bit on the Foundation internals and processes, probably. And if somebody is up for a Matrix Live with me, I promise I'm a nice person, and Rich can testify I make very good thumbnails. It's not a trap. Point of interest, I'm not working on Wednesday. That's it from me. Josh, are you around to tell us what's been happening in the Foundation last week?
Hello, good local time. So, you know, I had an update a couple weeks ago that was just like everything in the freaking kitchen sink. And what I am finding now is, oh my goodness, how do I manage my time? That is quite a fun challenge that I'm still coming up to speed on as the managing director here. So last week was a lot about reorienting and not too interesting things to report on there, but pleased to publish the self-introduction, which even with some of our more serious skeptics seems to have gone over mostly well. So pleased with that. Spent some time looking at reporting and communications flows, sort of where we are and where we want to get to. We launched a room for people to directly approach the Foundation during working hours, and that's been really positive already. And then spending some time last week just tuning into other corners of the ecosystem, because I know the center of gravity for a lot of people that I work with are people who work at Element. So I want to make sure that I'm tuning into, in particular, other server and client developers. So just tuning in, paying attention there. This week, my burning priority is really the funding queue and leads that we have out of some that followed up out of last week's Linux Foundation Member Summit. I hear there's some stuff that needs to be done around FOSDEM prep, so going to be jumping into that. We'll be checking in on changes in the policy landscape. So the online safety bill is now law in the UK. That's a huge bummer. Got to figure out what our obligations are. Chat control, I believe, was something that was declined, and so is not being pushed into law at this point. But that is something that I want to check with our policy people on. And just a whole bunch of not that interesting admin to wrap up this week. Point of interest for me is that provided I don't test positive for COVID, because I was exposed on Friday, I will be attending Siegel in Seattle Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and presenting about event health and safety. But also Siegel's an event that uses Matrix, so with our supporters there. And that's all I've got.
All right, and that's quite a lot already. Did I forget anyone, or does anyone have breaking news to share? Nothing once, nothing twice. In that case, have a nice week. See you around.
Take care.